Welcome to Hey Mom, We Never Prepared for This, the show where we have the tough conversations around aging and caring for a loved one. Whether you're an adult child or an aging parent or anyone caring for a loved one, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Angela Vanderpool, and each episode we dive into actionable tips, heartfelt stories, and expert guidance to support you on your journey. Let's get started. Hi, friends, and welcome back to Hey Mom, We Never Prepared for This. I'm your host, Angela Vanderpool, and today we're diving into a subject that nearly everyone has heard about, but that is often misunderstood: the so-called stages of grief. You've probably heard people talk about them: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Maybe you've even wondered, am I supposed to be in one of these stages right now? Am I doing grief wrong if I'm not? Well, here's something most people don't know. These 5 stages were never originally written for people grieving a loss. They were actually written for people who were facing their own death. Let's talk about what that means, why it matters, and how understanding the real story behind these stages might bring you a little more compassion and freedom in your own grieving process. Back in 1969, psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross published a groundbreaking book called On Death and Dying. At that time, the medical world didn't talk much about what it felt like to be told you had a terminal illness. Kubler-Ross changed that. She sat with patients, listened to their stories, and began to notice some common emotional reactions. She identified 5 themes: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. These weren't meant to be rigid or linear. They were simply descriptions of what some people experienced when they were told they were dying. It was never meant to be a roadmap for grief after the death of a loved one. Yet, somewhere along the way, her stages of death and dying got repackaged as the stages of grief. And that is where a lot of confusion began. Over the decades, the 5 stages of grief became part of our culture. We see it in TV shows, in books, even in casual conversations. Someone goes through a divorce or loses a loved one, and well-meaning friends tell them, "You must be in the anger stage right now." But here's the problem. Grief is not a tidy step-by-step process. It's deeply individual. Some people cry a lot. Others hardly cry at all. Some feel anger. Others don't. Some experience relief, guilt, or numbness, feelings that aren't even listed in the 5 stages. By suggesting that everyone must go through denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, we risk making people feel broken if their experience doesn't line up. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken with who said, "I thought I was supposed to be angry, but I'm not. What's wrong with me?" The truth is, nothing is wrong with them. The model just doesn't fit every grief experience. Kubler-Ross wasn't the only one to study grief. Before her work, John Bowlby and Colin Parks had described 4 phases of grieving. And in 2007, a Yale study even relabeled her stages for the bereaved as disbelief, yearning, anger, depression, and acceptance, but still presented them like a timeline that needed to be completed within 6 months. Later research has shown that grief doesn't follow those neat steps. Depression, for example, is not inevitable. Denial is rarely the way grievers describe what they're going through. And acceptance, what does that even mean? Accepting that the death happened, accepting that life will never feel the same, or tragically accepting that pain will always be permanent, you can see how confusing this gets. When someone is grieving, they're often in a vulnerable, suggestible state. If a friend, counselor, or even a TV character tells them they must go through certain stages, they may start shaping their feelings to match, even when it doesn't reflect their truth. Imagine someone who never feels anger but is told they should. They might sit around waiting for anger to appear and feel like they can't heal without it. Or someone who is deeply sad might be labeled as depressed and given medication when what they really were experiencing is just the normal pain of grief. This can actually add more suffering because it creates shame and confusion or the belief that they are grieving wrong. So, what's the alternative? If not stages, then what? Here's the good news. Grief doesn't need to be forced into a neat formula. Every relationship is unique, and so every grief is unique. Some of us will feel anger, some of us won't. Some of us will cycle through a dozen emotions in a single day, maybe even in a single hour. Some of us may need to talk, cry, write, or create. Rather than clinging to stages, it's much more helpful to give grievers safe space to express what's real for them without labels, judgment, or expectation. That's the heart of the grief recovery method, which I am certified in. It's not about labeling what you're feeling, but about giving you tools to take action so you don't just carry pain for the rest of your life, but can actually move forward in a healthy, healing way. So the next time you hear someone talk about the 5 stages of grief, I hope you'll remember this. Those stages weren't originally about grieving the death of someone else. They were about facing your own death. And while some of those emotions may show up in your grief, you don't have to check them off like boxes on a list. Your grief is yours. It doesn't have to look like anyone else's. Thank you so much for listening today. If this episode spoke to you, or if you know someone who might find it comforting, please share it with them. And if you'd like to learn more about the grief recovery method or about my work, you can always reach out to me at angela@whisperingwinds.info. This is Hey Mom, we never prepared for this. Until next time, remember, you are not broken. You're not behind. You're grieving, and that is human. Thanks for tuning in to Hey Mom, we never prepared for this. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps us reach more adult children and their aging parents and loved ones. Special thanks to our sponsor, Dharma Healthcare Management, for supporting the show. Stay tuned for more honest conversations to help you find peace, clarity, and community with others who understand what you're going through. And we'll see you next time on Hey Mom, we never prepared for this.